You know, I used to think about the importance of my job was really to get people involved in ministry and to be a lending hand, to be a helping hand. And over the years, I've really come to understand that the real importance of being a volunteer is that somebody is going to learn to love Jesus a little bit more after and during the midst of their serving and giving than maybe what they did before. When I first came to Christ and was involved in a ministry that provided food to food banks around the city, everybody knew that I was from suburbia, but I was so broken, I was so beat up in a mess that I didn't have any words to say to anybody. I didn't think I knew it all. I knew nothing. And so for once in my life, I was pretty quiet. And I think that gained respect with the guys in the city that I still have today, that there's a mutual respect between me and them. And it was right before Easter, and I was working at Compa again, and a nursery up north of town called up and said they had, you know, like 600 Easter lily plants that they couldn't sell and didn't know what they were going to do with them, and would I come and get them and, you know, hand them out to our churches. And we used to hand out on Friday mornings all the food that we had, and the churches and the food banks would come pick it up. Well, this was like Friday at 11 o'clock, and it just happened to be that it was my birthday. And I go, I don't want to do this. So would anybody else in the warehouse, you know, who was employed or working, would they want to go do that day? And they said no. So I get in the truck and I drive up to the flower warehouse, and not only do I have to pick up 600 plants, but the little sleeves they go in, I have to sleeve them all up and load them into the truck. And I'm probably cursing a little bit underneath my breath. Get back to the warehouse, and I go, I'm just going to throw them in the cooler, and they'll be okay till Monday. Well, Easter was Sunday. And so as I'm starting to unload them, I go, what good are these flowers going to do? So I throw them all back in the truck, and I start driving to some of the churches that we work with. And, you know, some of them aren't there on Friday because they're closed on Fridays. And so I just started looking for churches that had open doors and delivering flowers. And the tears, you know, from the pastors that received the Easter lilies because they couldn't afford it, to have on their altar for Easter Sunday was it's probably one of the best days of my life, and probably one of my best days of ministry, because I didn't want to do it, but yet the Lord made it so enjoyable that whenever I think it's going to be a burden to do this or that, I remember that day and go, you know, look how much joy I got out of doing that. We used to get loads of potatoes once in a while. Used to be a chip factory here in town. And so when a load of potatoes came in to the warehouse for potato chips, they do a lot of testing on it. Sugar content and water content are just a couple of them, because if it's too high or too low, they won't make great potato chips. And so when they had a 40,000-pound load of potatoes that they couldn't use, they would call up Compa and say, how fast can you unload it? Now that meant going in with shovels and banana boxes and shoveling the potatoes into the banana boxes and carrying them out of the semi. And so we would get on KWBI radio station, which is now K-Love, and I would ask for volunteers. And one day this gal came in, and you know, she was in her 50s and pretty petite woman, and she said, I'm here to shovel potatoes. And I kind of chuckled and told her she needed to go in the office and help with some office work. And she went in there and was there for a minute or two and walked back out and said, no, I'm here to shovel potatoes with you. I'm here to help you empty this semi. And my boss, who has since passed away, Bob Sullivan, Bob was kind of a Pillsbury doughboy look, and his laugh, you know, had this big barrel laugh, and he gave her the shovel. And 8 hours later, she was still shoveling potatoes with me. And so what makes a great volunteer is somebody who's persistent. One of the comments I've heard from an ex-convict recently was that the God in prison is not the same as the God out of prison. And at first that caught me off guard a little bit. But here's what he said. He said, you know, a lot of Christians will come into the prison to minister to me, to pray with me. But when I get out of prison, they really don't want me in their neighborhoods. They don't want me in their church. 36 years, I didn't do what the Lord wanted me to do. But you know, He found me, He redeemed me, and He started opening up doors to do what He had prepared in advance before the creation of the world for me to do. So be a good volunteer and do what the Lord has created you to do, and do it so that you understand and love Him a little bit more than you did before you started serving.